Welcome to the Rising for Women podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Merlo-Booth, and I believe the world will be changed for women when we change how we walk in it. So each week, we're going to have hard conversations. We're going to explore new options. Some of them are going to be hard options, and we're going to have some real, straight talk. We're going to do that because I have faith that women can handle it. To the Rising Podcast for Women. I'm Lisa Merlo-Booth. With me is Dee Marcotte and Arlene Newman, our hosts. And today we have a really special guest and we're super excited. It's our very first interview on the Rising for Women podcast. And our first guest is Molly Jenkins. So Molly Jenkins is a licensed marriage and family therapist with 9 years experience in private practice in Denver. And she's working towards a certification as a sex therapist. Molly specializes in working with the LGBTQ population, high conflict couples, infidelity and affair recovery, sex and sexual identity, non-monogamous relationships, mixed orientation relationships, relationship deal breakers, and relationship deal makers. Woo, that's a lot. You can learn more about her practice at www.mollyjenkins.com. MOLLYJENKINS, mollyjenkins.com. Woo! Welcome. So you got an interesting practice, to say the least.
Very rich, yes.
Yes. So one question that just came up for me just from your bio is, what are mixed orientation relationships?
Yeah, so this is I added that in there because I just recently did a workshop with Dr. Joe Court on mixed orientation relationships. He's done some research and some literature on it. It can be a couple you have one heterosexual, one who's sexually fluid or non-heterosexual, or it could be a couple where one partner has come out as gay or lesbian and they decide to stay married and keep that preserve that initial partnership and find another way to make it work without having to divorce.
Interesting. So okay, well, let's jump in. So we asked you to be here because we wanted to talk about kind of open relationships. You know, it seems like a lot of people are talking about it. We've seen some in our offices, and we wanted to have the conversation. Do you have one partner who's realizes they're coming out and they're gay, and the other partner is heterosexual and they decide to stay together? Are they typically deciding to stay together and non-sexually? So one's going to go outside the marriage, but they're going to kind of maintain a friendship marriage. Is that what their decision is usually?
Yeah, or like a life partnership, or maybe a non-sexual relationship, or maybe they occasionally do. But I think a relationship like that needs to make an allowance for other partners.
Yeah.
But maybe there's more invested in the family or the primary relationship that's not worth giving up, or maybe other financial reasons, or they get along well. They still love each other. They've just found a way to be companions and maybe meet their sexual needs in other ways.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is it meeting their sexual needs, or is it meeting their emotional needs and sexual needs in other ways? I'm very curious about what those relationships are like.
Yeah, I haven't seen a whole lot. I think it takes years for them to kind of develop and evolve and figure out what's happening for them. But the sex and emotion, that split is really complicated, and I don't know if there is a way to disentangle those. If there's a way to have other sexual partners outside the relationship that aren't emotionally intimate with you, I just don't know if that's possible. To keep that kind of a rigid boundary.
Right.
So if we broaden it and we just go to consensual non-monogamy in a lot of ways, because that makes this sexual emotional thing sticky. But what's the difference between that and just going out and having an affair?
Well, I think it's much easier to just go out and have an affair, and it's also much more socially acceptable. It's well understood that affairs happen regularly and consistently, and you might have a partner who says, go ahead and sleep with someone else, but just have the decency to at least cover it up. It's way more common to do that than to bring your girlfriend's boyfriend home for Thanksgiving dinner with your parents. I mean, that's where people get really stunned by that it's deeply uncomfortable for people to imagine other relationship configurations, I guess. So I think affairs are much more common and widely practiced.
So the difference is kind of a secrecy versus non. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. Yeah. Is it negotiated beforehand? Have you both agreed that this is something you want to try? And what are the parameters we're going to set? So it's something that's it's consenting by both partners, whereas an affair is usually covert and a surprise.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody, and he's in a gay relationship, and he's like, it's okay to be with another partner. And I said, well, did you have an agreement with your current partner that it was okay? And he's like, what does it matter? I'm like, if you're saying you have a monogamous relationship and then you go outside of it, it matters, right? If you guys have the agreement that you can have an open relationship, then that's not cheating. But if you have the agreement that you're going to be monogamous and then you're going out, then that's cheating, and that breaks trust, and that's really harms the relationship. When you said bringing your girlfriend or boyfriend home for dinner with the parents, I had to laugh. My dad's passed away now, but he was an Italian. That would not go. Oh no. You don't bring, I can't even imagine that.
I can't imagine that either. Jewish, Italian, Irish, any of those. No, I don't think that would go over well.
No. Oh, Dad, meet my two boyfriends. No, not happening. Okay, so why? I was looking at the stats, and there's about 4% of people are in open relationships. So that's not a lot, especially given how much talk there is about it. But 4% are in open relationships. What do you think, if you even know this question, like what leads them to go to open relationships? Like what propels them to do that?
I think humans have an innate desire for more. The desire for novelty, for new discoveries, for adventures, for something new and different to help them feel alive. If you've been with your partner for 20 or 25 years, you may see them as more of a familial relationship than as a desirous or passionate or intimate one. And you have the longing to go explore, see what else is out there. Or you may have a variant sexual orientation that you're just discovering, and you need to find out more about. Or you just need a partner who plays chess with you on Wednesdays because your spouse doesn't really like or enjoy playing chess. So, I think it's more about, for some folks, it's more about mutual interests and hobbies that your partner doesn't share. You need somebody to go to watch scary movies with, and your partner doesn't care to. I think, there's just so many different ways that this can unfold. But I think ultimately we tend to lose ourselves in our long-term relationships over time. We lose sense of who we are and our identity. And sometimes knowing that there's someone else out there who finds us attractive or appealing or desirous is enough to bring back our love for ourselves in a different way. Kind of, it's a way to return to who you once were. I think that's probably the biggest benefit is you're reconnecting to yourself through someone else, through, you know, it's very powerful. Someone else's image of you is incredibly powerful. And we can kind of forget who we are over time. We need to be reminded that we're still attractive to other people. You know, our spouse's impression of us doesn't really hold much weight after all that time. Sometimes you just need validation from someone else that you're still appealing, desirous, attractive, cool, funny, unique, special, whatever it is. So yeah, it helps us come alive, I think.
Couldn't my husband and I just go to a bar and pretend we've never met each other and then put on a fake story and and like, you know, jazz it up that way, you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
you know,
great idea.
So there's a difference between being with, you know, saying, hey, honey, I'm going over here, you know, I'm going with my friend to a football game because you don't like football games, or I'm going to my friends to the movies because you don't like chick flicks and I want to see chick flicks. And we're just friends, versus I'm going to sleep with them because you don't want to do this. And so it's an interesting, I would imagine there are some people that this is just totally not for, and there are some reasons that this would be a bad reason to do it. I don't know. Dee and Arlene, what are you guys thinking about some of this?
Well, I'm still trying to think about how this would come about, how you would introduce this idea to your spouse, and how you get over the shock maybe. And I'm wondering whether you've experienced that, whether they come to you to actually bring it up, or do they come to you when it has been brought up and the partner is having a very strong reaction. Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around how this whole thing unfolds.
Yeah, I think it can take a number of years. It's very risky to introduce something like this to your partner. It's scary. There are a million ways it could go wrong. And I think in your original email, Lisa, you had asked if it's more common for men to initiate these discussions than women. And but I think I found, in my experience, well, I found a website that's a dating site for open relationships. So I don't know, it's not probably scientifically accurate, but they said the 2/3 of women are the ones who initiate these discussions.
I was reading that. I was actually surprised. They were saying that more often than not, it's the women who are initiating.
Yeah, and that's what I've seen in my practice as well. It's men are usually the ones who are thinking, oh, she would never consider it. She would never be open to it. She'd never be open to, or whatever sex act it is that they want to experience that they're too, you know, nervous about discussing. You know, I think the men kind of get caught up in this Madonna horror complex that the woman I'm married to would never be open to something like that. So they just wouldn't risk it. But these numbers kind of make sense. I mean, if we have more women than men reporting boredom in the bedroom, we have more women than men reporting fewer orgasms. It makes sense that we would probably be the ones to suggest it. But I think it takes a long time, a lot of contemplation. It's not something, you know, you blurt out in the middle of dinner. It takes a lot of like lead up, you know, or maybe there's someone already, you know, maybe there's a work spouse that's a situation that's already going on and you just need permission to flirt. And is that okay? Is that a threat to our relationship? If I have flirtatious, you know, banter with a work spouse or with a friend who we both know, is it, you know, you know, open relationships are on such a big continuum. You have, you know, on one end, I mean, is it okay for me to check someone out as they're walking by in the restaurant? Is it okay for me to write to a long lost lover? Is it okay for me to watch online porn? Is it okay for me to fantasize about someone else while we're intimate? I mean, there's that could be threatening to some, you know, just these beginning steps of checking out. How do you feel about that? How would you feel about that if I went on a flirty date with our long-term mutual friend? How safe would you feel? You know, it's a series of many discussions. It's a long process, I think, of figuring out, okay, it's been suggested, now they come to my office, okay, what do we do with that? How can you help us figure out what the boundaries are and the rules are, and how can we do this? How can we execute it in a way that's protective of each of us? And you know, how do we even think about this? What does this all mean? Is it too risky? Is it too threatening? What else is going on in their relationship that might make it safe or unsafe? You know, do they have relational skills? Do they manage conflict well? Do they repair quickly afterwards? Do they communicate well? How are these discussions? Are they too hard? Are they too contentious? Is there mutual respect?
Yeah. So when you're saying, and I was reading about this also, that some of it is like, they could just say, it's okay to kiss somebody. Like you can make out, that's it, you know, or you can all to the gamut, you know, the whole gamut, where you can actually you can have another boyfriend or girlfriend, and as long as we both know about it, that's okay. So it can go anywhere from, you know, you can kiss to you can have another relationship, and we'll just figure out from there where we go.
Right. It's a wide spectrum.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a client where you know, he wasn't very sexual, and unfortunately, rather than having a conversation, she went and had an affair that he found out about. So then he had to work out they had to work out the whole affair thing. But after that, it was like, you know, he was just weighing, so what does this mean? And how do you have the conversation and this and that and the other thing? And, you know, it was kind of like they figured out, you know, he was kind of like, yep, every week. Well, so how are you guys going to talk about it? And she would say, I'm going out, because that wasn't a thing she would know. So that means he knew that. He knew who it was. And the biggest thing was, you can't travel with him, and you can't be with him on holidays.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it worked fine, you know.
Mm. That was their negotiation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what it sounded like. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a question in terms of, so you said some of this, like really looking at what's going on in the relationship, because that's the part that I think I have found with people who come in is kind of like, okay, well, until we figure out this, I don't think you should go over here, because like you haven't really worked on this part of your relationship to know. You know, so there's that part, but I hear a lot of people, it was even a colleague of mine who said, oh, these are just people who are love avoidant. They just don't want to be close. So I'm just wondering I mean, that's not what I believe, but I'm wondering, like, how do you look at that in terms of?
Do they have commitment issues?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I don't know, you know, that could be, I guess that's it's a way for folks who are maybe you know, have an avoidant attachment style to be safer in relationships if they have a number of relationships that are slowly developing over time. I don't know that I don't know that I see that very much. But sure, I suppose it's possible that they're just, you know, it's a way to stay boundaried in their relationship.
Mhm.
I'm actually thinking that the way you're describing what happens and how they have to kind of talk about it and negotiate, that it's extremely intimate
Mhm.
because they have to really reveal all kinds of things and make themselves so vulnerable to each other by even bringing it up and asking the question. So I don't know. I think
Mhm.
any relationship that can handle it is pretty evolved.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point, Darlene. I think that's it. Once you've broached this topic with your partner, you've already added another layer to your relationship.
Absolutely.
It becomes more multidimensional, it becomes deeper. It's very scary and difficult and vulnerable to have these conversations and to know things about your partner that might surprise you, that they've been thinking about for years, that they've never told you about, or they have some sexual secret that has been undiscovered until now. It can really be life-changing for people. And uniting. Okay, we're going to do this together, we're going to go on this adventure together, we're going to figure it out, we're going to make mistakes and probably get hurt over and over, but we're going to try it anyway because we want something different, but we still want to be together and celebrate each other and love each other and see each other in a new light when you see how someone else looks at your partner. But I think it's incredibly intimate to have these discussions and hard. And that's
Terrifying. I would think it would be terrifying, especially if you still value your partner and you don't want to destroy the relationship. I think you're taking a huge, like an unbelievable risk. I can't imagine it.
right.
Mhm.
So that's where you'd really want to assess the health of the relationship and the safety of the relationship. Do you have some incompatibilities that are troubling to one person or another? Is one partner depressed and not getting help? Is there a deep relational issue that's tearing them apart? Like those couples probably wouldn't be suited to this
Right.
kind of thing. You need a partnership that's very solid, very secure. Egos aren't in overdrive for either person. And they have the relational and emotional sophistication to understand that there's, when you have new relationships with people, you go into the limerence phase and you get caught up on the love drug, in the love drug coma, and eventually that wears off, and deficiencies and dysfunctions are revealed, and you'd have to have two people who understand that that's a risk, that you're going to maybe find someone you fall in love with for a year or two, and then not so much anymore when they become a real person and not an idealized mate.
Mhm. Do
Just
you
like
ever tell
affairs.
people don't do this?
What?
I was asking Molly, does she ever say to someone, you guys aren't a good couple for this?
Uh-huh.
No, because once they've made the decision, it's, you got to support them to figure it out. Some of them are already on the verge of divorce, and this is kind of like their last shot to try to save it, to see if it would help. It doesn't always, but sometimes it's fun for a while and they learn things about themselves and each other. Even if the relationship doesn't end up working out, maybe they've decided to stay together for financial reasons, for, maybe they own a business together that they can't disentangle themselves from. They can't sell their house right away, so they have to figure out a way to live with each other in the, not necessarily as exes yet, but as a couple that's slowly coming apart, and they allow for other partners in the meantime while they're trying to figure out what to do. So
I understand, like, for those like where they're already estranged or they've been in a sexless marriage for years and one wants sex and one doesn't and things like that. How common are your couples who are looking for this, who say that they're in a good marriage?
yeah, I mean, a lot of them are younger and either haven't been in a relationship that long or aren't married yet.
Yeah.
It's more rare to find a long-term couple that's
Mhm.
ready to do this. It's easier to do earlier on in the relationship.
Yeah.
Much easier than, when you're 25 years in.
Right.
But yeah, so if you've got a couple that's been in a sexless marriage for a long time, and they have a good marriage generally, yeah, I mean, again, it takes a year or two or more to really come to the decision.
Wow, that's a long time.
We're
That's
going to
interesting.
risk this.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they're just kind of having a lot of conversations. They're kind of testing the water for a long time before they ever jump. That's a long time, a year.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think important for people to hear though, because I think the people who want to do this, they're finding that out, that it takes some time to talk it through. But I think that like people outside of that, who judge it, tend to think, oh, you just decide like that kind of thing. And that's not really true. This takes really a lot of conversation. And I think you're making a good point about you're caring, like, unless you're on the brink of divorce or whatever, you're caring about the relationship that you're in. This isn't about, I don't care about this relationship. I'm just looking for something over here.
Right.
The couples that I have had, and I work with monogamy, with traditional monogamous relationships, but a few couples have come in and where he wanted to and she didn't, but she wanted to agree to not lose the marriage. And to me, well, anyway, what are your thoughts on that? How common is that one of them is going to agree just because they don't want to lose the relationship?
It's very common. There's a term for it. It's called poly under duress. That Dan Savage.
Perfect description.
Yeah.
It's very common because it's rare that open relationships start out as open. Most relationships to have to come to this over time, and it's a slow evolution. Most relationships don't start where both people are sure about that eventually is something that they want, but let's go ahead and build our relationship first, strengthen it, get our trust built, and then decide what to do. And then maybe when they suggest it again, it turns out they're on very different pages about it. They both had two very different fantasies about what it would look like. But yeah, it's very rare that both partners go into it saying, okay, we're both open to being open. It's usually one person has to kind of, reluctantly push forward with it in order to support their partner, even though it's deeply uncomfortable for them. Sometimes it doesn't work and they've tied themselves in knots trying to make themselves okay with something they're not okay with. Or sometimes once it's happening and things are kind of rolling along, it turns out they're not as pained by it as they imagined they would be. It's actually something that's somewhat fulfilling, or they're relieved that somebody else has their partner on Wednesdays and Saturdays and they get the night off to spend, in the bath or whatever. So the benefits are revealed. But yeah, it takes time to figure that out. And one person is probably going to be more resistant, but doing it because it's either that or they have an affair or they get a divorce. Isn't it worth a shot to try to see if we could make this work? And how realistic it is. Maybe they don't ever end up finding a partner. They just want to go on the search. And that's the part that's most appealing for them. Or chatting online with someone, building that kind of a relationship, but they don't actually want to go out and sleep with someone else. They just want something to, something exciting to fill their time.
So that's so interesting when you say, why not? If, like, why not give it a shot? I would say, if you don't want to, hell no, don't. So it's interesting. Like, don't go against something that you feel like you don't want to do, male or female, whoever it is. So interesting. And when you say they need to build they need to build the trust in their relationship first, and then they try this, that's so counter to me. Like, I'd be like, I'm not building a trust so that we can like, are you crazy? Like, I would like go in first. If I was thinking this, I would start the relationship like that. I would never go in trusting and then say, okay, I don't, it's just it's just like you're flipping my brain around that I'm like,
I think
what?
this is really flipping our brain, because to think about this is so different than the way we think about, healthy, emotionally nurturing, supportive relationships. But I as we're talking, I'm starting to think about it. Like, my mind is slightly opening to seeing in a different way. It's very hard. It's very, very hard. But I see a couple of things. I see one way of trying to open up a relationship to compensate for what's missing. Like, if things are not working, to try and get something from the outside to kind of supplement what's missing. But then I also see the possibility of having a good relationship and then wanting to expand somehow. I don't really know, expand what? Expand experience, expand your emotions, expand your mind. Some kind of expansive, something that you want to expand your life and your relationship life. I could see that as being another pull.
Mhm.
And then I see what?
Oh, I was going to say, there's a lot of love to be had in the world. Why do we limit ourselves to one?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
This is what we've been taught. We've been taught that. Wow.
Well,
What did you
for
say,
me,
Lisa?
I damn well
There's
better
this
be-
soulmate.
like, I want to be special. I don't want to be your one of many. Like, no, like, it's so, and this is where I think that it's gonna, you have to know yourself. And if I would think, if either partner is jealous, no, this is not going to be the thing for you. If yeah, if, like, for me, there's no, hell no. Like, no. I just because, I'm a 3 on the Enneagram, if anybody does the Enneagram, and so I want to be the best, and this like messes that up. Like, hell no. Like, I'm not playing with Susie and Sally, and no. And so, and if I had, Steve and John and Jerry, I better be Steve and John and Jerry's favorite too. Like, I'll have 3, but I want, so like, it just, it's so very funny. Not a candidate for me at all. And I would imagine that, we're all looking for how to make your life, great. How do you enhance it? How do you do that? And this has the same problems as monogamy does. Like, you do start getting hurt, and you do, feel cheated on. And they do start, like, it's all great, but then when they go away for 2 years and they're like kind of in that affair stage with a new person, and you're like wounded and you don't have your new, like, as human beings, I think we want to belong, and we want to feel special, and there's no perfect.
Right.
And we want to feel safe, and we want to feel protected, and we want to feel loved and cared about.
Right.
And I was the one that I'm kind of like, well, I don't see why you guys have such trouble with this.
Arlene's saying she doesn't. I'm the one that's no way, but yeah, it'd be weird.
I'm not so sure. I don't know. I'm trying to open my mind and see, well,
Yeah.
You know,
I think part of it is also, though, like I've had friends who had consensual non-monogamy, and like part of what they would talk about is that having that kind of thing that you were talking about, Arlene, the expansion. I liked that word because that is what happened for them. Like they were able to keep, I think, and explore in new ways with new partners, their own like interests or new interests or sexuality or whatever it happened to be. And they would both talk about how then they brought that home. So there was this different kind of richness in the primary relationship because they could have these other feelings which didn't have the role restrictions of the primary relationship. Especially if, like you had said, listen to some Esther Perel, and yeah, I've listened to every one of her podcasts. But I remember her talking about, unfortunately, it was more an affair kind of thing, but where it was a perfectly happy relationship. There wasn't any problem with the relationship. It was just, if I go over here, I'm not a mother, and I'm not, this, and I'm not this, and I don't have to clean the house. It was all about the things I didn't have to do over here. I could explore being different parts of me.
Well, I have to say, I think this is much more respectful than having affairs.
Oh, totally.
Much more respectful, much more difficult.
much more difficult.
Much
Takes
more
a lot more courage.
Right. Right.
And like you said, Molly, a lot of communication.
Yes,
Like,
so much.
like it's kind of like if you're sort of like, oh, gee, we can't talk about anything. Okay, well then, like, how do you think you're going to talk about this?
Right, right. Yeah, have to have those skills in place. I mean, and the communication about how much do they want to communicate about it?
Right.
Do you want to
That's
give
right.
some privacy? How much do you want to know? How much do you not want to know? Do you want to know that I have a date on Friday, but you don't want to know who the person is or ever see them or ever meet them? Or is it only on work trips? Or is it only, is it only friends? Or is it no friends? No one we know together? Takes communication to communicate about what do we want to communicate about? But yeah, Dee, I think the bringing home the new energy is what's really appealing for people. Like you may have desexualized your partner over the last decade, and now all of a sudden that there's someone else kind of in the mix, you see your partner differently. They become appealing again in a way they weren't before, because there's some contrast now between them and someone else. And there's a term for the bringing home of the new feeling called compersion. And it's when you experience joy seeing your partner experience joy. It's rare. It doesn't happen in all of these arrangements, but when it does, it can be really, really powerful to see your partner thriving in a way that they haven't, because they get out of their roles. If I go to my boyfriend's house on Thursday, I don't have to do the laundry or feed the kids or, I don't have to be the boss or the breadwinner or the mom or the sister. You get out of your environment, you step into a new context, and all of a sudden you are a new person. You're alive in a way that you haven't been, or in a way that you can't really be at home in the day-to-day. There's now all of a sudden there's a mystery to me. I spend an hour getting ready, when I sit around here in my sweats all day. I put energy into going out to be, being my best self. That feels good. And then my partner gets the benefit of that too, of seeing me thrive and be in my element in a different way. And vice versa, if it works out that way, seeing them also be valued in a different way than I can value them.
So what are your thoughts on swinging?
It's great. It's fun. that's one way to kind of step into this world with your partner, with the safety. It's all on the up and up. You can see what everyone is doing. You know, there's not really much hiding unless you make an arrangement for that. But it's a way to kind of dip your toe in the water to see how that would feel, to see if you have a reaction to watching your partner be physically intimate with someone in front of you. For a lot of folks, that's just too much, or that's not what is wanted. But it's a kind of a way to test yourself, to see, oh, am I as jealous as I thought I was? Maybe I'm not. Maybe I don't have a reaction to it. Maybe I find it really exciting. Maybe it really arouses me to see my partner with someone else.
Say swinging is more about sex and open relationships are more about relationships?
I think generally, yes. And I imagine swinging is usually when your partner is involved. It's something you do together. It's, you know, everything's out in the open, whereas an open relationship might be you have a relationship with someone else that's kind of private, and you talk about it afterwards, but you don't see it happening in front of you.
All right. Oh, go ahead, Arlene.
Now, I was going to say that when I was looking at some of the literature, they used the word playing. And I thought that was really interesting, that there's a way of thinking about it, that it's like a game. It's like you're going to go to your friends and play charades. So you're going to go to the swing club and watch each other have sex or whatever. That it's a very light, and it doesn't appear to be really threatening the relationship. It's just like doing something that would be fun and exciting for both of them. Is that been your experience with swinging?
I think so. It's contained, right? So nobody's coming, you know, maybe you find a neutral space. Nobody's coming over, you know, nobody's responsible for anything during that time. You find a neutral space and that you get to step into and play and, you know, be a lighter, different version of yourself, or you know, some kind of a role that you're enacting in this particular setting. And it's great that it's playful and it's enlivening. But it's not too serious, right? Nobody's
Right, it's not too serious. That's the impression I got.
For anybody else's feelings, right? If feelings come up, you all work that out for yourselves. So it's, you know, it's adult play. Yeah.
It's adult play.
Yeah.
So what happens though if it's sort of like somebody's brought this up and that sort of thing, and
Which one, the swinging or the?
No, I'm sorry, just open relationships.
Open relationship.
And or it could be either, I suppose. And so partner A is bringing partner B so that you convince partner B this is a good idea. And partner B really just says, no, I don't want to do it. Like, do you come up with those kinds of things? And
I haven't had that happen where somebody's dragging someone in to try to have me convince them, and I would feel pretty icky about that.
Yeah.
You know, I want for themselves, whatever that means, and I think it's okay to test the limits of that. And find out. Sometimes that's the only way, you know, is we got to try it and experiment. And if it turns out, yes, I'm confirmed, you know, at least that's confirming for me that it's really not for me. It's not what I want. It goes against my values. I'm just not in alignment with myself and in my integrity. Well, then at least you have that confirmation, right? You know, and then with any future partners in your life, that's a hard limit for you. You've already done the discovery work, and you're not going to make that same choice again. But you've got new information now that you're armed with. So, but yeah, I wouldn't. It's not my job to convince anybody to do something they're uncomfortable with. That's just not going to work.
Yeah, it feels very icky. I have had couples come in and somebody wants that. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm like, this is not my role.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we talk about in this podcast is really, women rising, women stepping into the world with a grounded, powerful strength. And what would you say are the do's and don'ts for women around this? Where is it where women are playing small when they do this? Where is it that women are grounded when they do this? If you thought about it, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there's a lot there. I do think it can be really empowering for women to try something like this. It can be liberating and freeing. And yeah, that's a big open question. You asked for do's and don'ts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I think it takes a tremendous amount of ego strength to sustain something like this. Either your partner having another partner, or yourself having another partner, or you're venturing into the dating world. You have your safe partner at home, and that's a safe and secure relationship. But now you're going into online dating. You're finding a new partner. It's excruciating, right? You set yourself up for all this rejection. It's terrifying. It's scary. So in doing that, you're building ego strength to know yourself better. You're affirming yourself before you go out there and do that. It's really hard, but there's something. Yeah, I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, so I speak in, I feel special. I feel unique. My ego's already telling me that I am. So I don't have to be threatened by, someone else coming in and threatening my relationship or taking my partner away. I mean, go for it. If you think you can find someone better than me, have at it. I mean, relationships are such a huge investment emotionally. I don't think that people are out there do this. I think this is why it's can be a good option for some, because we all experience wanderlust once in a while, and it can be a better option than divorce, to give this a try, to find out if it can be fulfilling, or to find out that it's a terrible mess and not at all what you want. But in finding that out for yourself, I think that's an empowering choice for women to know how to do this, to know if it's for them or not, to find out what they can learn about themselves in venturing into this scary unknown terrain. Monogamy itself is, Esther Perel in her book, The State of Affairs, talks about monogamy as an institution being an arrangement for men. I mean, in the beginning, it was so we know whose children belong to whom and who we're going to pass the land and the cows on to. It was an arrangement to ensure that the wealth stayed within the patriarchy. It's a patriarchal institution in itself. So having an intimate relationship with one or more partners it's a radically feminist thing to do, in my opinion. Bucking the system, bucking the norm, bucking the patriarchy.
Well, that certainly puts a different spin on things.
Doesn't it?
Sure does.
It does. Interesting. So one of the things I would say to women is, if you're curious and you're genuinely curious for yourself, go for it. But if you're not, don't just try it, because I think that's, we gotta,
Right.
Don't just try it because you feel like you have to, because you're gonna lose your marriage, or because somebody's like, women, you tune into yourself, tune out everybody else. And if you're thinking, hey, this would be curious, I'd like to try this, or this might be interesting, then check yourself. Does that feel right? Does it feel like, yeah, you want to give that a go? If so, go for it. If not, don't. And don't feel pressured by anybody else to have you be doing something, whatever that is. Playing the piano, having sex, swinging, whatever it is. Don't feel pressured to do it or to not do it because of what the world's telling you, patriarchy or not patriarchy, whatever it is. And so that would be, you know, I think it's really important for women in this in this area.
To not react to being pressured either way. Right. Not by, so not to be pressured because somebody wants it and give into it and you don't, but also to be pressured not to because you've been told your whole life that that's not okay to do. Right. So either to just be aware of where you are regarding the pressure and to kind of separate yourself from that and figure out really what you want. What's going to be fulfilling for you.
And be okay at any time during this process to change the rules, as long as you're open with it. Like you guys can, you know, if you decide to try this and then you're like, no, I don't like it, then say, no, you don't like it. You decide to try it and you're like, I like this, but not that. Or, oh, I didn't think I would be okay with this, but now I'm okay with this. Like you always got to be checking in with yourself. And at any time you can change the rules. Just be open with whoever you're talking about it with and whoever you're in partnership with. I mean, one of the things I do like about what you're saying and the difference between affairs are never okay because you're breaking trust. I don't care if you want something new. You go to your partner and you say, hey, listen, I'm struggling. I'm attracted to somebody. I know we said we wouldn't have an affair, but I'm struggling on this. Let's try to talk this through. And so I do like this. I do like the idea of having honest conversations rather than cheating.
Right.
This personally, it's not my thing. However, you know, not everything is everybody's thing for everybody. So I think that that's just really important for all the women listening. Like, just what's your thing? What are you open to? What are you not open to? And no judgment. No judgment. That's like, we're harsh on each other and ourselves. So no judgment on that, you know. Molly, another question that's just coming up for me at the last minute, like you do LGBTQ, is this more common in the LGBTQ community? I know with gay men it is. I'm wondering with gay women, is it, or LGBTQ, is it more common? Just curious.
Yeah, I think it is. It certainly with gay men, it's more widely practiced.
Yeah.
And with women, yeah, I think folks who identify along the sexual variation spectrum are more likely to be open to a relational arrangement like this, because they're pretty in touch with their sexual identity, they're pretty in touch with their sexual needs, and they are learning to advocate for them, and
they're already going against the norm, so they're like, they've had that in some way. Yeah,
they know how to do that in a way, right?
Right.
The practice.
Right, exactly. But yes, you always want to be open to rules to change and know that this is going to be a continual negotiation. Like marriage, the marriage contract in itself is already, it should be continually renegotiated over time. And I think because monogamy is the default setting for most of us, we go into relationships expecting that that's the default for our partner as well. And it's really not explicit that this is our agreement. It's just assumed. And so I think it's important to have those discussions early on. You know, is this something you'd ever consider? Or if it did happen, if one of us did have an affair, would that be a relationship extinction level event? Or could we survive it? And if we could, what do we think about what that means about affairs, or why it might happen to us? What would be our plan? Yeah, rules and negotiations and boundaries, they're open and kind of flexible because we don't know what's going to hurt us. We don't know what's going to feel good or empowering. until we make a big mistake or someone really is harmed, and then we have to figure out what to do to repair it. You know, I think humans are kind of filled a lot of times with like an anticipatory regret that they will reach a stage in their life where they don't feel fulfilled, or that they wish they had tried something that they didn't, or had an adventure that they've always dreamed of but just didn't have the means to. And so I think again, that's why it's worth finding out if this is something you could do, so you don't arrive, you know, in your 50-year anniversary and say, gosh, I really feel like I missed out on something, and wish we had these discussions sooner, or yeah.
I'm thinking about what it would do to a couple before they committed themselves to each other, to have this kind of open conversation, because I think that if down the road there is infidelity and it's never been talked about, it threatens the relationship in a very, very deep way. But if you have that conversation beforehand and you know where each other stands, then you already have something you can go back to and talk about that could be extremely helpful.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking new thoughts. That's what I want to say. This is really opening up my mind in a way that I had not really anticipated.
I'm so excited to hear that.
It's pretty exciting to be thinking that way.
Yeah, but I love when couples will come to me for premarital work, because I will always ask them about their relationship to monogamy, and have they thought it through? Is that what they want? And a surprising number of them will say, you know, I'm not attached to it as I was 5 years ago, or I might consider that we'd be able to have an alternate arrangement someday. A surprising number of them report openness to it before they get married, which I think is a really important discussion to have before you enter into.
Yeah, I love that. I really do.
Yeah.
All right. Any last questions, thoughts before we wrap up, you all?
I think a lot to think about. I don't know. I may want a repeat of this down the road after I've had a chance to really mull this over, because it's definitely giving me a lot of new ways of thinking about things.
Great. I'd love to have this discussion again anytime.
Molly, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, interviewing you and just like learning and kind of blowing our minds a little bit, which is so
instead of going outside our marriage, we can just have this kind of discussion. That's already very expansive and exciting, right?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's been a real pleasure and great to meet all of you. Adi, good to see you. Yes. And yeah, let's keep talking about it.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you again for joining us this week. And always remember, you have the power to change the world for women by changing how you walk in it. I challenge you to choose one way to stand in your grounded, powerful strength this week and be part of the ripple of change.